First of all, I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to who are MP&Co. We're a marketing agency. We are kind of full suite, but basically we only like to work with people who make a positive impact. So these are some of our little slogans. Hopefully you'll always find our team to be happy, honest, helpful humans. Our purpose is to make a difference, drive purpose and collaborate, which is another example of this webinar and our collaboration. And essentially we work across strategy, empowerment and execution as well, across full digital marketing services, print, anything you can think of. We've got partners such as Ben and Jordan that we work with, or we've got an in-house team that can service straight away. So as part of our journey so far, we decided to undertake the B Corp certification. This means we're part of the global movement for an inclusive, equitable and regenerative economic system. It impacts all of our decisions, to be honest. If you've been through it yourselves, if you're considering going through it, it's not for the faint-hearted. It will get you questioning and looking at every single question, decision and I don't know, policy even that you have ever created or need to create. But it's really great and it helps you to kind of double check, have a criteria of what do I want to do with my work in the world. And we found it really fulfilling that we can definitely angle towards that purpose driving for our clients, making a positive impact, giving back and building for a more sustainable world. So I just wanted to include a little slide on that because if you've never heard of it, I just didn't want it to pop up later and then someone just thinks, what on earth is B Corp? So if we talk to B Corp, well, we mention that because we do have a few B Corpers on with us today, but then at least now you know what it is all about. So today we have got the pleasure of being joined by Ben, Managing Director of Studio 91. Ben, do you want to give a little intro now? Or yeah?
No, I'm too embarrassed that I'm wearing the same shirt as on my headshot. I didn't think that through at all. Um,
I've only
uh,
ever seen you in that shirt. You only have one shirt. It's very
it's my nicest one, and fat face, speak up. I am Ben. I run Studio 91. So we're a video production company. We have kind of similar values to MP&Co in that we tend to work with people who are specifically purpose-driven. A lot of our clients are charities or educational non-profits. And so, yeah, a lot of what we do is documentary storytelling or highlights from conferences and events, or it's kind of education and training content.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ben. That was very humble. Ben is exceptionally talented and has created a suite of different videos for a number of our clients, including a couple of you on here today. Ben has been some of the mastermind work behind that. And yeah, a absolutely brilliant portfolio behind him, including like the BBC, if we can just little name drop that one. So there we go. Jordan, same. I'm going to open up to the very talented Jordan now to give him a little intro.
Hello everyone, I'm Jordan. I'm the director at Studio Anti-Gravity. It's a freelance consultancy that works across like animation, design, illustration, anything creative I can kind of jump in and do. Client-wise, it's been quite a wide range of clients. I've worked with everyone sort of from Kellogg's to Co-op to even the police. Yeah, quite a wide range of different clients, and I've been collaborating with Ben and MP&Co for a while. Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Fabulous. I'm really looking forward to sharing. There's a little video later so you can have a sample of what Jordan is all about too, which I'm sure you'll be very excited to see. So thank you both for joining us. I'm also joined by my incredible team. So Lucy, you're going to have to give a wave. This is actually her old job title, account manager. You just went with that. She's also our impact lead. So Lucy, I will let you introduce yourself. I was about to do it for you then, but
Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm not I am MP&Co. I'm from MP&Co, but yeah, that's not my full name. I'm account manager and impact lead at MP&Co and have been here for about 3 years. I would say video, absolutely. I wouldn't say is my hugest forte ever, but it's just so important to talk about at the moment with the rise of the trends of video marketing. So we'll be kind of setting the scene, why it's important, and then I will leave it to the true experts of Ben and Jordan to take you through the rest. But yeah, just happy to be here and happy to see lots of faces today. So yeah, thank you for joining, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucy. And finally, I'm Daniela. I'm the speaking voice, but I appreciate that my Zoom seems to have frozen. Hopefully the picture shows that I'm not as white and terrifying as I look in the image, but never mind. If you need anything today, do just feel free to ping myself, or we are lucky to be joined by Akvile as well. Just ping us a message directly in the chat and we'll be able to help you. So to get the most of today's event, please do get involved. I can't stress that enough. So really keen for you to keep note of any questions. So we will have opportunities for questions along the way and some input sessions, but also we've got some Q&A at the end. So please do make a note, whether you prefer to whack it onto your phone quickly or write it down. Make sure you make a note so that you've got it down and you don't forget it at the end. On that, you might benefit from a pen and paper if you want to dig that out now. Please stay caffeinated and hydrated. It's not school. If you need the loo, please do go, but make sure you turn off the microphone. That's just my one big ask, and the camera really, but yeah, all good. And get involved in the chat as we go. So today's about collaboration and we're really excited to share. So we're going to be cracking on with Lucy's going to kick us off, like she said, setting the scene for why video marketing is really key. We've got some real stats to bring it to life for you and hopefully set the scene with some content ideation so you can start picturing actually what kind of video would I want to make myself. So with that in mind, we'll carry it forward. Ben will be taking stint 2 with video creation. He's going to be helping provide some tips on DIY video production and how to work collaboratively and well with an agency. Jordan's going to be, I don't want to say bringing up the rear, it's bringing it all to a lovely close, we'll say. But I know a lot of people, including a couple of you guys on today, aren't exactly about getting in front of the camera, and there's some nerves around that. So animation offers that brilliant opportunity for those who don't want to I don't know, people have got fears about becoming an influencer. Maybe you underestimate how difficult it is to go viral, but it is great to have that option of injecting personality in a different way. And we're also going to be talking about how they can work really well together as well. Talking about the process of it as well, and the rise of AI. So I think you'll find that fascinating, seeing the sketches come to life essentially. And like I mentioned before, there'll be some time at the end for Q&A. So please do keep notes of any questions that you've got, anything burning, do note it down. And we look forward to cracking on with it. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Lucy.
Hi again, everyone. So just want to start off with a very quick question. I want you to pop your answers in the chat. Anything that springs to mind about why you think marketing loves video. So why is video such an important tool in marketing at the moment? Anything from kind of brand awareness right through to your analytics. So don't feel shy, put it in the chat. If not, then I'll be forced to just continue rambling on until at least one of you put something. And I won't pick on you, I promise. There'll be no.
Please, someone put her out of her misery.
just one person, and afterwards, I don't know, I'll send you a chocolate bar or something. Wonderful. Human faces and voices make us feel things. Easy to digest. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really key one. Not necessarily always the easiest to create, but very, very easy to digest. And we'll definitely be diving into that a little bit later on. So thank you, Annette, and thanks, Ben. Everyone else, I'll be waiting for you. Cool. So countless reasons why, some of which are going to pop up on the screen now. And this list that's coming up is actually a pretty short list that illustrate the importance of video marketing. In my head, I was going to reel all these off like I was a horse commentator or someone with a little gallop. But yeah, it's a skill. So I'll let you read this at your leisure. I don't want to sit here and walk through every single one of these reasons and explain what they each mean, because we really want you to actually leave with some actionable points that you can then put into practice rather than feeling pressured to create video content, but without any actual steer and just a lot of information. So I'll touch on a couple of the kind of more how I would put fluffy points above, even though they are still very important. So things like brand awareness, showing off your offering in action, and the fact that video enables you to paint your brand just as you want it to be shown. So I think with video, there's limited room for ambiguity, or for it to be taken out of context. What you see is what you get with video. Whereas sometimes if people are just reading lots of copy about what your brand does, what your product represents, it can be taken out of context. Whereas with video, it just absolutely demonstrates what you're about, what your brand is, what your product does. And I think there was a little bit at the bottom that might have been cut off, but it's fun and it's different and it's fun for you to create as well. But all of the above is pretty useless unless your video actually gets seen, of course, which then brings me on to my next point, which is the algorithm. So social media algorithms, if you don't know a lot about them, is something that we've probably heard a lot about though. They're essentially a set of rules that inform your feed on what to filter out when showing you content. So it's based on what content you historically interact with. It favors kind of dynamic and relevant content. The relevancy is very important, and meaningful information that suits your demographic and your needs. So it's something that we can't really escape hearing about at the moment. It's one of the reasons why I consistently get fed recipe reels on my Instagram, and probably why I get hit with quite a few sponsored ads about lager subscription boxes, but won't dive into too much about that on a Wednesday morning. Yeah, I think it's also one of the reasons why I actually came on LinkedIn a couple of months ago. I don't know if anyone else saw this post, but it was a guy who said, I just proposed to my girlfriend yesterday, and this is what it taught me about B2B sales, which honestly made me want to throw up in my mouth. I logged off instantly after seeing it, but I saw it because it had had so much interaction and so much engagement because people were just saying how ridiculous it was. But I mean, it worked for him. He had tens of thousands of comments and likes, which I'm not going to recommend you kind of degrading your partners to talking about B2B or sales when you've vowed to spend the rest of your life with them. But it worked for him. But yeah, again, it's not something I'd recommend. But yeah, I thought I'd give a very quick whistle stop tour on how to feed it. So yes, with video content because it's dynamic and it's eye-catching, but it's also important not to just create video for the sake of creating it. We really want to create something that's relevant and meaningful, but also gets seen. So one of the main ways to feed the algorithm is posting consistently, which I don't think many people really like unless you're used to it, you've got a lot to say, or sometimes, I'm not saying this about any of you guys, but if you've got a big ego, so you can always pretend that you do. So it can feel a bit tedious, a little bit cringeworthy, a bit effortsome. But if you find things that you're really passionate about, things that you think are relevant to your audience, just do it. If you take my LinkedIn, for example, my personal one, you will see that there's some weeks where I might post 3 or 4 things because I'm really determined to get my personal brand up to scratch. But then you'll see 2 months where I do nothing, which, the algorithm hates, and which is why I get about 1 like per post. So don't follow my example. Another way is using really relevant hashtags that actually make sense for your target audiences. So whilst putting, hashtag Brat Summer over the last few weeks might have got you quite a few views and loads of impressions. If you're a financial institution or, I don't know, a freelance gardener, then that traffic probably isn't very useful at all to you. Another one is to comment your links. So if you're creating a post with a link to a different website that is relevant to the post, the algorithm doesn't like it if you put it directly in the copy, because essentially sites like LinkedIn want you to stay on LinkedIn. And if you're putting a post out there that encourages users to leave the website, then they're not going to favor that in the algorithm. So put a post out there, comment the link, and you're more likely to get seen. This can be a little bit tricky to do sometimes if you're using things like social media scheduling tools, because it doesn't always allow for that. So just do it where you can. I think especially in terms of your personal brand as well. But yeah, again, I think the main points here really are sharing the relevant information, meaningful content, and diversifying your content with things like video and imagery. So very quick whistle stop tour, and I'll move on to the next slide. So digital marketing. I absolutely wouldn't say that I'm the biggest digital expert in the entire world, but it's the part of marketing that often people care about the most and is the bit that really, really kind of makes sense. People care about analytics, right? So I almost like to think as digital marketing is kind of the science of marketing. So if you think of creative content as the subjective part, then digital analytics is kind of the objective proof behind why it actually all works. So I'll quickly run through these points here. So because of the engaging nature of video content, people will spend more time on your site to watch it rather than reading reams and reams of copy that might be on your homepage. And Google picks up on this and rewards you with higher rankings. So video content on your website is a really great way to boost those search rankings. But it's just very important to consider how you're planning on incorporating video on your site. So whether it's through a link, whether it's embedding, or whether it's a pop-up, all important things to consider. But if you are planning on embedding your video, you need to consider things like it will have an impact on your bandwidth, on your web performance, and on your speed. So all really important things to consider there. Backlinking. So SEO backlinks are essentially a link from another website that takes you to your website. And these high quality backlinks, so from kind of reliable sources, can really increase your ranking on search engines and improves your visibility in search, which obviously leads to more traffic coming to your website. So they're essentially just a bit like endorsements, a recommendation from one site to your site. So if you're uploading your video to YouTube, in the caption, in the description, you can put a little link to your video, which will kind of boost that backlinks. So when you're considering SEO in your videos, make sure to optimize your video with keywords and titles in the captions as well. Data. So video platforms are really, really great at churning out lots of important data and analytics about the performance of your video. So you can then tweak and enhance your current strategy, try out A/B testing, or split testing, so you can compare two versions of the video to see which one performs better. When doing this, though, we want you to listen to the data, obviously, to amend your strategy, but always make sure you keep in mind the purpose of your video and your brand's essence, and don't just blindly follow the data and kind of lose the reason why you started the video in the first place. And finally, trends. So it's impossible to ignore the trend of video marketing at the moment, and sometimes hopping on trends that you see on TikTok might be the thing that just gets you from 50 followers to 5,000 overnight. Unfortunately, there's not always a specific science to it. It can just be a case of being in the right place at the right time. But when you are kind of thinking about jumping on a trend, make sure that your video is still relevant and meaningful to your offering and to your audience. Because if there's one thing that you want to take away from this, is meaningful content is what will get you views and results, which will bring me on to some interesting stats on the next slide. So 20% of LinkedIn users, sorry, that's wrong. LinkedIn users are 20 times more likely to reshare video than any other type of post. This is largely to do with kind of emotional connections that videos can evoke. So there's lots of videos out there at the moment about men's mental health, especially in a football context. So it's taken two things that are massive topics, both for men, putting them together, and really, I've seen them and they've made me well up, and I have about, one heartstring. And that's the type of things that I would reshare myself because it really stuck with me. 118% organic view growth on YouTube over the past year. A lot of this is to do with people's diminished attention spans, unfortunately. So people are more likely to watch things a lot more passively. So say, for example, I've dropped my phone in a puddle and I want to know how to get the water out of it. I can just put a little YouTube video on, listen to it whilst I'm making a cup of tea, whilst I'm drafting up an email, whereas I can't do that whilst I'm actually reading unless you've got, three sets of eyes. So it's kind of people going for the videos for information rather than Google at the moment. 90% of marketers say video marketing has given them a good ROI. So this is largely to do with the fact that you can make your video work really, really hard for you. So you can repurpose it in so many different ways. Like, for example, this webinar is being recorded. Don't worry, you won't see any of your faces on YouTube. But we'll put this onto our YouTube, we'll repurpose it into blogs, we'll split it into chunks, put it as a social series on LinkedIn. So it's everything that we're doing with video is really for the long run, and it can work really, really hard for you further down the line. And 80% of video marketers say video has helped them to generate leads. So again, this is due to the emotional connection, your brand awareness, position yourselves as experts. So just some stats, not to scare you, but just to re-evoke what we're talking about today. And I will very, very quickly finish my section with a very quick 3-minute exercise that I want you to do now. So I want you to write down 3 questions that you are asked about your brand, your product, your service. So kind of the things that you might see on an FAQs page. 2 things that your customers need to know. So whether that's something to do with, say, like the delivery time, who will they be working with, price, and then 1 thing that you really want to share. So this point is around kind of where you want to show off, essentially. So I'll give you 3 minutes now just to write these things down, and we can leave this screen up. But just to let you know, these slides will be available to you all afterwards, as well as a recording. So this is an activity that you can use in any type of content that you want to put out there going forward. But it just essentially helps you pull together actually relevant content ideas that are useful for your audiences. And also make sure that they're hearing about all the added extras, or kind of, the fluffy bits that aren't necessarily always asking for, but will still give them value. So yeah, just a couple minutes for this exercise. And then you have to hear my voice again. We were going to put some funky elevator music on in the background, but it's not always a winner, to be honest. Again, this is a condensed version of an activity as well, so you can, if you've got more time in your own time, you can think about even more questions you're asked, more things that they need to know, more things that you want to share. But it's a nice starting point to kind of drill off the key points. I won't pick anyone after this, just for you. This is just for your own benefit, really. Oh, if it's okay, I'm going to stop you all there. If you haven't finished, obviously take the time to finish in your own time. And if you've got any questions about this exercise, or if you want any inspiration for any other exercises that can help you, feel free to email me. You should all have my email from when I sent you the invite yesterday. But cool, thank you so much, everyone. That was my very, very quick whistle stop tour. And I will now hand it over to Ben and then to Jordan, who can really get into the crux of everything. And they'll be the ones who will be teaching you the bulk of everything. So I will hand over to them.
Thanks, Lucy. So I'm going to talk about 2 main things, really. One of which is DIY video production. So what I mean by that is the video content that you're making yourself, maybe with a camera, maybe just with a phone, possibly with no formal training. But then I'm going to also move on to how to work with an agency. And those two things might seem like they're polar opposites, doing video yourself versus outsourcing it to a video production company. But I just want to say at the start that they're not mutually exclusive, and I tend to recommend to clients that they do both. The reason being, people don't have the time and money usually to outsource everything on a weekly or monthly basis to a production company. What I tend to suggest is that people do a bit themselves, say on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and then bring us in when time and budget allows to do those kind of slightly bigger hitters, the more polished pieces, the things that feel a bit more like a film, basically, where you want to put a bit more effort into it, perhaps to celebrate an event that's happening or to celebrate a milestone in the company, whatever it is. Like Lucy said before about algorithms, you want to post consistently, and you also want to be relevant. So if you're doing a big polished piece of video content once or twice a year, it's unlikely that that's going to be really timely, really relevant, and it's also not going to make your social feeds consistent. So yeah, one thing I would say is I'd really recommend doing stuff yourself and then outsourcing from time to time, when you've got the need and the budget and the time and the specific thing that you want to do, a thing that you want to achieve with that content. So let's get straight into DIY video production, which is how to get the best out of what you've got, even if all you've got is a phone. And everything I'm going to talk about now applies regardless of what you've got kit-wise. If you do have a bit of camera kit, this is all going to apply. If you've just got a phone, it will work equally well. So the first thing to talk about on the next slide is framing. Framing is all about where you're pointing the camera and what you're pointing it at. So one of the things that people tend to get wrong, first of all, is the angle. They have the camera angle too low more often than not. I'll show you what that looks like. So if my camera is down here, you're getting a lot of chin and a lot of nostril, and also quite a bit of ceiling. We don't really want any of those three things in most cases. So the rule of thumb is get the camera at the subject's eye level. I say the subject because that might be you yourself, it might be someone else that you're filming. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to say subject a lot, but I just mean the person that you're filming or animal. Get it at eye level. And then the other thing is headroom, which is the amount of space that's above the subject's head. You don't want too little space because you're going to chop off the top of the head. You don't want too much space either, because if I come down a bit, so that's what a lot of headroom looks like. It makes me look very small, and it also means you've got kind of a lot of wasted space at the top. So the rule of thumb with eyeline the rule of thumb with headroom rather, is to have your eyes about 2/3 of the way up. So if I kind of split the frame into thirds, you've kind of got 2/3 of the way up is where my eyes are. Depends a little bit on how wide or close the framing is, but the rule of thumb is eye level 2/3 up. The next thing is eye line. So is the subject looking directly at the camera, or is it looking off camera, for example, at an interviewer? Neither of those is right or wrong. They're both completely fine. All I would say is decide at the start of the project which of those you're going with. Usually if it's more of a sort of documentary piece, say an explainer about your organization, you're going to have a lot of interviews where someone is looking off camera. If it's something where you're, say, some piece of training or educational content, or something that directly has a presenter, that person will be speaking at the camera like this. So just decide what you're doing at the start of the project and stick with it. And then with what's in the foreground and the background of your shot, the rule is ABD, always be deliberate. Think about what's there and think about whether you want it to be there or not. Think about, is that going to bother me when it comes to editing this video, that thing is there? Does it feel too cluttered? Does it feel too empty? Things like that. So I think that's it for framing. Let's move on to lighting. I've not got time today to go into loads of detail about like professional lighting setups. Usually what we would call, if you are interested, look up 3-point lighting, because that's a really basic way of setting up if you do have lights available. But more often than not, all you need is a good natural light source. Filming outside works really well, but then you're likely to have issues with background noise. So the easiest thing to do is to sit in front of a window. Don't have the window behind you, because usually that will make your face silhouetted and it'll make the lovely view outside just white, because of the contrast between the light outside and the dark inside. So the subject, so you or the person you're filming, should be facing the light source. That's why I'm sitting facing a window right now. So I've got plenty of daylight streaming in, hitting my face. Not too bright. If it was a really, really bright day and the sun was directly coming through this window, I'd probably be quite pasty white, a bit like Danny looks today. That sounds like I'm being really mean, but I didn't mean to be. And so in that case, I might look at closing some blinds, or changing the angle slightly so that that direct sun isn't coming straight at me. Because again, you're just going to get too much contrast, and your camera or your phone isn't going to be able to cope with that, and sort of interpret it in the way that the human eye does, which is to see all those contrasts and interpret it and see things accordingly. If you are using artificial light, again, just think about how intense that is and what angle it's coming from. You do not want a really harsh, hard light shining directly at your face, because again, it will just make you white. It'll remove all the shape of your face. And it'll, more often than not, it'll also create quite hard shadows on your face. So you might get a shadow of a nose kind of coming across. It doesn't look good. So you want to go with softer light, or light that's further away or not pointed directly at you. The final thing on lighting is just avoid mixing different types of light. This is a bit hard to explain without an example, but basically artificial light and daylight and different types of light bulb, they're all slightly different colours. And if you mix them up, unless it's for deliberate effect, it tends to look quite strange. And again, your phone or your camera will struggle to interpret what those colours are supposed to look like. And that's why sometimes on a Zoom call or on something that someone's filmed themselves, they might look a bit too green or a bit too orange or a bit too blue, and that's what's going on there. It's the mix of light sources. So a little exercise next, and if you get ready to pop some answers in the chat. Can I have the next slide, please? Wait, hang on. Back to that one of Jamie.
It's not acting as fast as my fingers are, so it's catching up.
Oh, I see. Right. So we're going to play a little game of spot the difference. Can I have answers in the chat, please? In case it's not obvious, the picture on the left of my lovely colleague Jamie is a good example of framing and lighting and composition. The one on the right is a bad example. Can you just stick in the chat any differences that you see between the two? What works about the one on the left? What doesn't work about the one on the right? Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, lighting. So Jamie's got a light source on his face on the first one. In the second one, it's completely dark. The angle is wonky. Yeah, so I think the whole camera is tilted slightly to the left. Do I mean left? Yeah, it's tilted slightly to the left on the one on the right. Yeah, skew if angle. Yeah, Blake, items placed with purpose. So you can kind of tell on the first one that the objects both in the foreground and the background feel like they're meant to be there. On the right, you've kind of got a plant sticking out of nowhere. You've got a lot of kind of wasted negative space with the wall in the background of the shot. So it's just not really thought through. Yeah, headspace or headroom. On the right, there is way too much. So like I said before, it kind of makes Jamie look really short in a strange way. So because he's so low down in the frame with so much space above him, and again, it's wasted space because there's nothing there. Not that you have to fill every bit of space, but you've got about half the shot that's just wall. Have we spotted everything that I was going to talk about? Yeah, that's about it. So it's really composition. It's where things are placed, both in the foreground and the background. It's the angle of the camera, and it's the light or lack of light. Perfect. Eyeline. Oh, I thought he was looking at the camera in both, but Oh, and yeah, so in the foreground, hiding behind a plant doesn't give him any setting. Yeah, so in the first one, we can kind of see, oh yeah, it's someone who's working at home. And it sort of tells a bit of a story without him even saying anything. In the second one, I don't know, it's someone who's upset about the bad composition in his kitchen, I guess.
Someone's overwatered his plant, I think.
He's overwatered his plant and he's sad about that. Yeah, maybe it's for a plant company, I don't know. Cool, amazing, well done everyone. So let's talk about sound. Again, I'm not going to kind of go into all the kit that might be involved with recording sound, but again, the thing that people tend to get wrong is they're just too far away from the microphone. You might not have a microphone, but if you're filming with a phone or you're filming with a camera, then the microphone is embedded in that. So if you're filming someone with a phone and that's the only audio source, and the phone is 10 feet away and you're outside, you are not going to be able to hear that person clearly. Even if you're inside, if the phone's further away, you're going to get a little bit of echo. It's not going to sound great. The closer you are, the better. Obviously, there's a balance. You don't want to be so close that the shot itself doesn't look good. But in general, if you've not got any sort of external mic, I would look at being sort of 2 meters max away between the subject and the recording device. If you do have an external mic, like a clip mic, so I'm wearing a little clip mic here, which is plugged into my laptop. That works really well because again, it makes sure that the person speaking is close to the thing that's recording their voice. That's going to reduce background noise. It's going to reduce echo as well. It's going to be really, really good for you. What was I going to say on that? I don't know. In terms of background noise, again, it's about pausing for a second before you start recording and thinking, what can I hear? What is going to bother me in the edit? If you're at home, think, is the washing machine running? If you're outside, are there a lot of cars going? Is it as simple as if I move around the corner, it's going to reduce the noise of cars, it's going to reduce the amount of wind, whatever it is, just have a think and check whether you've optimized the sound as best you can. Inside, soft furnishings work really well. So if you're someone with hard floors, with quite bare walls, no curtains, it's likely that you're going to get more echo. So yeah, go for kind of soft furnishings where possible. I know it's not always something you can control. If you're outdoors, there's pretty much no echo outdoors, so that's great. You just need to make sure you're somewhere that's fairly quiet and not near a main road. Yeah, bad things are hard surfaces, empty rooms, roads, town centres, windy days, flight paths, aircon, and the kitchen with the dishwasher running. I have dealt with all those things before, and I've made mistakes where I've been in those places when I didn't need to be. Sometimes you have to be, and there's ways around it, but the easiest thing to do is just get an external mic and or get that mic as close to the person speaking as you possibly can. Okay, one more little demo on the DIY video production thing. By the way, I'm not going to go into editing today because there just isn't time. That could be a whole separate webinar on its own. But yeah, there's a bunch of apps available. Canva's really good. Adobe Express is really useful as well, just as a really quick way of putting video content together. So, quick scenario, and again, stick answers in the chat. Let's say I need to record a short piece to camera. I'm in my house. I've got no camera kit other than my phone. How am I going to make sure that my framing is right, that I'm well lit, and that the sound quality is good? All I've got is a phone. This is the test to make sure you've been listening. Was anyone listening? Yep, sit in front of a window. Phone at eye level. Any suggestions for how to get the phone at eye level? 2/3 rule, yeah, thank you, Blake. Yeah, Kirsty, so soft furnishings, great shout, and using books to prop up the phone definitely works. Yeah, so Blake's pointed out that on the iPhone kind of native camera, you can have the sort of rule of thirds guidelines added to that, so you can see where that line is, and be close to the mic. Cool. I'm going to show you what my setup looks like today, because this, if I was sitting at home recording something with a phone, this is kind of pretty much how I would do it. Kirsty, can you change phone settings for a front and back mic on your phone? I can't remember on the native iPhone app. I use a different app for filming called Filmic Pro, which has got a lot of control over which mic you're using and that kind of thing. I'd have to check about the actual native camera settings. I literally have my laptop set up on a big box. That's all I've done. So I've got a box, I've got a laptop on it, and then I'm using my phone to record this Zoom meeting. And my phone is literally, I can't really show you that. My phone it was propped up against the laptop screen here. So a laptop on a box works really well as a little phone stand, which is going to make sure that your angle is right because it's pointed directly at me instead of up, and it's at eye level. So this works really well for filming. It also works really well if you need someone else to record remotely. You can set up a Zoom call with them, but ask them to record on their phone in this way. So you can still talk to them over Zoom using the laptop, but get them to record the video using their phone so that you've got the best possible quality rather than a laptop camera being sent over an internet connection. So you get them to film it on the phone, get them to send it to you afterwards, you're going to have a much better quality thing, but you can still speak to them using the Zoom call. Top tip. And then sound quality wise, obviously because of the setup, I'm only about 1 meter away from the phone. I've made sure that the washing machine isn't on and stuff, so that's working well. And I've also got an external mic plugged in. So I've got a little, this is a little wireless receiver that's plugged into my laptop and is connected to my mic. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Filmic Pro, Lucy's just put that in the chat there. That's the one I would recommend. It used to be a one-off fee, now it's a subscription, which is a little bit annoying because it was sort of £10 and you sort of bought it outright. But I would still recommend it. If you're doing a lot of filming with your phone, that's going to give you control over focus, exposure, which mic you're using, what format you're recording in, what the frame rate is. It's got a lot of stuff that just doesn't come with the native camera apps. And that's Android as well as iPhone, by the way. Lovely. Right, that's it for DIY video production. Obviously, there's time at the end for questions. Is that what we're doing? Questions at the end, yeah? Hope so.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. But yeah, jot down any questions you've got and we'll come back to them. Yeah, so a quick kind of guide to outsourcing video production. Like it says there, it's about getting the most out of the partnership. If you hire a video production agency, it's not like going to the supermarket and buying some bread. It's not an off-the-shelf product. It's a very bespoke thing. It's very subjective. It's something that you're going to have a lot of opinions on. They're going to have a lot of opinions on, which is why collaboration really is key. In some cases, this might be you going directly to a video production agency. In some cases, it might be you going to a marketing company or a communications agency and going through them, especially if you're not 100% on your messaging and your strategy and those kinds of things, because a marketing or a comms agency will be able to work through that with you and, again, collaborate with the video company. So first thing is the brief. And this is all about knowing what you need before you go to the agency. But I would say always kind of be open-minded to their ideas. Sometimes a brief is so specific and there's no room for wiggle room that you don't necessarily get the best results because you're not making the most of the creative minds that you're paying a lot of money to produce this video content with. So the things to think about with the brief are: what are your expectations? What is it that you want the audience to feel? Who is the audience? And what do you want them to do as a result of watching the content? And again, that's one of those things where if you don't know the answer to any of those questions, you really need to be going to a marketing or a comms agency first to kind of work through that before you get into the production side. You need to know what the budget is. People are often a bit, especially British people, are a bit squirmish about talking about money sometimes and kind of how much money is available for this video content, but it really is how long is a piece of string. I'm sure Jordan will say that animation is the same, because it can be huge. It can be Netflix level budget, or it can be, single camera, 1 day shoot and a quick edit. It really does range depending on what's available and what's needed. So I would really recommend being upfront with the agency about what's available money-wise. This is what we want to achieve. This is what we've got to spend. How can we make the most out of that money? I think sometimes people think that if they say what the max budget is, the video production company will just max that out and say, yeah, that's how much it costs. We're going to do a really simple video and it costs £10,000. It's not like that. They're on your side. They want to get the best with what's available. We talked about audience already, but where are they going to see the content? So what platforms are you on? Is this going on all your platforms or just specific ones for specific audiences? Because that has a bearing on how it's shot, but also on the edit, because there might need to be different versions. So for example, there might be a portrait version as well as a landscape version for, say, Instagram Reels and YouTube. Think about the duration and the number of videos involved. Again, that has a bearing on cost and editing time, but it's also something that you need to know before you do your shoot, because you need to know how much content you're gathering. And also stick in the brief any creative ideas you've got while being open-minded, like I said, and include any examples of this is the kind of thing that we've seen. For example, it might be from your competitors. We've seen this video that our competitors have done. We want to do something along these lines or something that's a twist on this. Someone just sent me a brief just this morning that I've not looked at yet, but he's asking for a case study film, and he sent me some examples of this is what our competitors have done. We want something like this, basically. That helps me to know what the expectations are, what the deliverables are, and what it's going to cost, essentially. Lovely. So next thing is choosing your agency. So yeah, 4 kind of quick tips basically for how you actually choose that agency. First one is, if you've seen something already that you like, try and find out who made it. It might be that there's a write-up in kind of industry publications. So something like Prolific North, maybe there might have been an article saying which agency made it, or the agency themselves might have written a case study or put out a social post. So usually with a bit of research, you can find out who made something, and then you could just get a quote off them. But also, even if you don't get that agency to make it, you can take that example to someone else and ask them if they can make something similar. Talk to your contacts, maybe just put out a LinkedIn post, say, has anyone had for example, a case study film made recently? Would you recommend anyone? Put together a bit of a short list, send them the brief and gather quotes. Ideally, kind of be upfront about, we're going to 3 different agencies, for example, so they know. It's good to know as an agency that you're not the only person that's been asked about it, but you're not one of 50. If I was one of 50, I probably wouldn't put as much effort into putting that proposal together as if I thought I was one of 3. And also, when you're making that decision, don't go on price alone, because cheapest isn't always the best option. The most expensive often isn't the best either. It's kind of finding a balance between how much you've got to spend and what that collaborative relationship is going to be like and what the outcome is going to be like. Okay, we're going to talk about budget again. This is about, again, not being afraid to ask what things cost, to ask what's the breakdown, how will the price change if we add in these deliverables? How much will the price change if we add in an extra filming day or 2? These kinds of questions are really good to have upfront. And like I said, our job as the agency is to give you the best possible results with the money available. We are on the same side, and we're not out there to fleece you. Okay, so when you get, excuse me, once you've picked your agency, you can kind of go into some phase of development. This can vary from project to project. When it comes to animation, there's usually a lot of development, which Jordan will talk about. It's a more involved process often. We might go into, if we're making a sort of documentary style short film, we might not need that much prep. It might just be a case of, we're going to film this event, we're going to capture what we can, we're going to get the interviews that we can, and then we're going to put something together and sort of feel out the story in the edit. It might be that there's a whole script involved, or at least bullet point outlines, maybe a bit of a storyboard. Either way, it is important at the briefing stage that everyone knows how much pre-production is involved, because again, that's going to have an impact on cost. It's sort of how much of the agency's time you're using at the start before production goes in. Again, this is another thing where if you're working with a marketing agency or a comms agency, they're going to be doing the bulk of the work at that pre-production stage. If you're going direct to the video production company, maybe we as the video company are doing more of that. There's always a mix of input from the agency and from the client. There can be more from the agency, there can be more from the client. But again, it's important for everyone to understand that relationship up front, so that we know who's doing what, who's responsible for what. So next one, collaboration. Like I've said a bunch of times, both parties want the same thing. We're on the same side. It's about kind of getting the best results, because that is ultimately what we all want. I would say, please respect the agency's expertise. So again, you're spending a lot of money for them to know what they're doing, and for their creativity and their ideas and their experience. So you're the customer at the end of the day. So we want you to have what you want out of it, but also listen to the agency if they have concerns, or if they think that there might be a better way of doing it or a more efficient way of doing it. You're the expert on your brand and your organization, so communicate your messaging and your values really clearly, because that's going to help them come across clearly in the content. Cool. So the last thing I want to touch on is the sort of feedback process. So the video's been planned, it's been shot, and we're in the editing stage. Maybe you're kind of on the first or second draft. We use a platform called frame.io for the review process, which lets clients add comments directly onto the video, and then we can kind of work through those. We can reply to them if we need to. We can tick them off once we've actioned them. The reason we use that is because we really like our feedback to be clear and concise and actionable. If we've got literally a to-do list of tweak this bit, tweak this bit, tweak this bit, we can work through that. Everyone knows what we're expecting. Everyone's on the same page, rather than a bunch of phone calls or a bunch of email threads where no one's really decided what's what. Another thing is that it's important to have one main point of contact between the agency and the client. So if there's a whole committee of people at the client side who are all having slightly different opinions, they're having to get it signed off by multiple layers, what you tend to get is a really confused mess of feedback. Sometimes what happens is we end up changing something back to how it was before because someone changed their mind or someone overruled them. It's much better to kind of have those discussions internally on your side, and then the main contact comes back to the agency and says, this is our feedback, please action these points. Usually there'll be a kind of number of amends that you agree to. Again, this is something you talk about right at the start, but the number of rounds of amends that are available to you. For us, it tends to be 3 edit passes, including 2 rounds of amends. So the first draft, then a version 2, then a version 3, and by that point we'd be expecting it to be signed off, unless there's something glaringly wrong with it. We wouldn't want any drastic changes to the format or the structure kind of beyond that version 2. So stick to those, and also, remember to be nice, be polite, be professional. Creative people can sometimes, this is me included, can sometimes be a bit offended by negative feedback. Even if it's entirely constructive, sometimes it just comes across the wrong way. That's not really your problem. I would just say, remember that, kind of have that at the back of your mind when you're sending those amends through. You might want to say, we really love the video, here's some things that we think would just improve it, rather than just, change this, because that might feel to the creative that you're just attacking the work that they've put loads of time and effort into. And then the last thing to say is, that list of amends you send might seem really simple to you, but it's likely that it's a lot more fiddly than you realise. I say it's not a Word document because sometimes I think that's what some people think, that if you say, oh, please take out a word here and there, I'm not just deleting that from a document. I'm having to rework the entire edit around that, probably fit some more B-roll shots over the top to make that cut work. I'm going to have to re-edit the music to make it fit properly. It's a complicated thing, which isn't to say don't give us any amends, we don't want amends. It's just to say respect that and be aware of that, and let's kind of work together and keep everyone happy. And that is me
That
done.
comes with sometimes when people like giving feedback for the sake of giving feedback because they feel like they have something to say, which I am victim to. I do it because I feel like I want to show that I actually have an opinion. But yeah, that's something to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Ben. Some really actionable tips in there as well. So I know that everyone will find that very, very useful. And yeah, I definitely need to tweak my home setup. So thank you for that. I'm going to pass over now to Jordan to take us forward.
Well, yeah, honestly, Ben, that was wicked. I think I noticed a lot of cameras. Everyone started like kind of shuffling the screens around, me included. I was like, oh, I'm not the 2/3 the way. I've done my own little setup in here now to try and get my eye level right. But no, you touched on really, really good points there, and there might be a little bit of crossover with what we talk about now, but then that's because motion, it's like when it comes to process in particular, it's two sides of the same coin sometimes. So yeah, I'll dive in. So I'm going to talk about sort of my practice, how I got started, as well as like some key points of the why animation is really good and sort of process too. So I'll jump in with a bit of a show reel. If this clicks and plays, it should be like a YouTube link, backlinks, everyone, you know. Is that going to play? Maybe.
You might have to control click, perhaps, Danny.
Ooh. I'm just checking on my slides here. Oh, good. Any joy? We can. I mean, it's only a show. I can share a show reel at the end or share a link if need be. We can crack on. It's playing up. Oh,
Oh, right, okay. Sorry guys, quick
I'm back. Sorry, my Wi-Fi did not like when I tried to go over to YouTube.
all
So
right.
we're going to try it now.
Okay.
Can everyone see YouTube?
Oh, that's interesting that it took you over to YouTube. I thought it was going to play it direct in the slides.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just go through a bit of this. So it just gives a kind of a little sample of some of the stuff we do. Although if it's jittering along, we can just move to the next slide, to be fair. But yeah, basically, like I talked about before, touching on a lot of different sort of clients and sectors, from stuff within B Corp to tech businesses to indeed the police. That was quite an interesting job that I did a while back. But yeah, touching on a lot of different things. So outside just animation, I work across like design, illustration, websites, basically anything kind of creative I can kind of touch on really. But yeah, we'll jump into the next slide. That's all right, Danny.
Absolutely. I'm just swapping over as we've got the YouTube bit. We'll go back to the presentation as it seems to enjoy that a little bit more.
Thank you, Danny.
There we go. Can everyone see the screen again?
yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. Right. Hopefully, it will let me press next. It's taking a moment. It sounds like it's about to take off. It was obviously feeling that interstellar vibe a little bit. So here we go.
There we go. Okay, sweet. So let's get moving and grooving. Okay, so basically, my background before running my own practice, as I do now, I worked in a variety of agencies and in-house, and I'd been always kind of obsessed with like take the idea of making something like move. I do a lot of illustration as well, and I did a lot of illustration in my spare time when I was working, and that's kind of what led me into illustration. I was always like obsessed with like, oh well, this static image that I've made is really good, but what if I can make it move? And you know, same with like any branding I did. It was like, oh, branding like this logo is really cool, but what if it like moved and how would that interact? And that sort of came a real backbone of like all my work really is that, you know, it's nice that I can create a brand, but then create illustrations for that brand and then make those illustrations move or make that brand move. So I mean, kind of all ties together, which is quite nice. Um, and then on the next slide, I'll kind of go into how I got started. So unfortunately, I got started in COVID. Probably the only good thing about COVID was that animation just absolutely skyrocketed. It was a bad time for obviously like pen and stuff with film because no one could film, but animation just absolutely soared. So that came a real backbone for me to be able to jump in and do what I do now effectively. So it kind of gave because animation can be done so fully remotely. I was able to jump on big sort of like animation projects and kind of get started from there really. So we'll jump into sort of what animation is and what like the key sort of areas of benefit from animation are. So animation at its core is taking illustrations or vectors or any sort of static thing and making it move effectively. It can be done in a variety of different ways, but all in all, um, one of the key sort of benefits from using animation is enhanced communication. So animations used quite often in like explainer videos where you take like some really complicated sort of thing and distill it down and use sort of like animated graphics to kind of really orchestrate what that sort of element you want to sort of discuss is. As an example, you could be, I don't know, so let's just I'm trying to think of something very complicated or something. Imagine like a nuclear reactor. If you're talking about a nuclear reactor, well, a great way to sort of describe that is to take an illustrated diagram of that and then make it move and show the process of how this reactor would work. But you can apply that sort of same methodology to a lot of different things. Point two would be, oh, sorry, can you press the next slide, please? Thank you. Point two is the versatility and creativity. So sky's kind of the limits with animation. That's what makes it kind of really fun. Whatever you can imagine, we can pretty much do. If you want to create a character and fly them up into space and bring them back down, we can do that. But obviously, one thing we always try to keep in mind is, you know, what those core messages we want to get across and how we can get those across simply, but in an engaging way that's fun and yeah, sort of engages the user really. And then on point three, brand differentiation, yes. So this is another really good thing is that because a lot of animation utilizes brand assets, brand elements, but also like illustration as well. Since there's so many different styles within that we can use, we can really make it a point of difference for your brand versus another. One brand might have line icon illustrations, for example, that they might do as an animation, or they might not have any animation at all. And you bringing in that animation gives a real key point of difference. I've got a really good case study example I'll show later on that I'll kind of dive into that sort of brand differentiation a little bit more. But I've got a little bit of an exercise on the next slide. I thought I'd check with you all. So, based on what I've kind of mentioned and what Ben sort of talked about, I'm really keen to know what you guys think is the real key difference between animation versus film. If you could just throw a few different differentiations into the chat and let me know what you guys think. Yeah. So obviously one of the biggest sort of difference of all really is that when it comes to film and that kind of side of things, you get like real people versus animated where you'll have animated characters. Yeah, that's a really good one from Blake there. Yeah, exactly. So with animation, again, we can do some really crazy stuff, but the great thing about film is that you've got that sort of human, real life touch. Yeah, non-fiction too. Yeah, if you wanted like a dragon or an alien brought into it, we could do that. Provided it kind of fits the brand. Yeah, that's another thing as well. Good one, Ben. About it can be wherever you want. I think another good thing is the kind of remoteness of it. Is that you don't have to be like we talked about at the start with the influencer stuff. You don't have to have your face on the camera if you don't want to put your face to the brand. We can create characters for that or utilize existing brand assets for that. If you click the next slide, please, we'll stop there and I'll kind of go into the differentiation. Sorry, press the next one again, please, Danny. Yeah, so you've all kind of nailed it on the head, really. It's animation bringing still images to life, and then film is bringing real people to life in film, effectively. But there is kind of a time where you can actually have crossover between the two. On the next slide, I've got an example that shows that sort of the combo of both animation and film. Because the way I see it, like film, it's a bit of a spectrum, film on one side, animation on the other, but there are times where you have like a really nice crossover. This is from an artist called Matt Voice. He did some really nice stuff with typography here that shows a really nice blend of like film with animation. There's also been some work recently done for the Great Manchester B Network done by Flow, which again, it's got like people walking through the street, walking towards the trams, and you've got all these like beautiful, like animated, illustrated characters kind of popping up over the top. It's a really great sort of example of that blend of film and animation because you've got the sort of real life people showing them on this journey, but then you're using these animated features to sort of show maybe what they're feeling on the inside and bringing that out into like the real world so people could see it. But yeah, I'll share a link at the end if anyone wants that because it's a really good bit of motion that Flo did. So on the next slide, I thought it'd be a good time to go through the process. So yeah, from my standpoint, the process is kind of quite similar in a way to Ben's. You'll notice this with a lot of like film and animation studios, the sort of motion process can be quite similar, but there's some sort of key differentiation. So yeah, the brief, much like what as Ben discussed, we want a detailed brief, what you want to achieve, what are the key goals, and what the key KPIs that you want to get across. And that kind of, you can apply that to sort of any business really. And then from there, well, once we've got that brief nailed and the sort of rough timeline, we then go into the script. That's where we really want to nail down the sort of narrative. It's really important to get that right because the script is obviously going to be what sort of relays throughout everything else. So, is there a bit of text missing on the script there? There you go. So yeah, once we've got the script nailed, we then move into sketches. Now, sketches are a little bit depending on what the animation is. So if we're using something that's like character based, then sketches are really handy to sort of get an idea of how we're going to sort of frame the scene and how things are going to move. And it just gives a bit of like an architectural drawing effectively before we go into actually build something. But if we're looking at an animation where it's just using like text and stuff like that, normally we'd skip this, but certainly for character-based animations, we'd want to dive into that. From there, we'll then go into illustration. This is where we kind of illustrate everything up, give it all a bit of a lick of color and a lick of paint. And then once those illustrations are good, we can then move into the next one, which is the animation draft. So once the animation draft is there, that's kind of your first kind of rough cut effectively. Once the animation draft is in a good state, we'll do the final tweaks and then we go to the final stage, which is drum roll, your finalized animation. So then we've got that. Normally I'll do it as like a 4K, super high res, really crispy animation that then you can share across YouTube, other socials. Normally at the brief stage as well, we'll try and figure out how we're going to break down that animation and where it's going to go. One thing I'm really keen on whenever I do animations for people is kind of making more bang out of your book kind of thing. We do all these illustrations for these animations. It always seems a shame that they never get sort of utilized outside of that. So, for example, on the next slide, I'll show you a project that just finished off for Blue Group. So this is a construction company, and they wanted to have a real point of difference by using animation. So to do that, we started off. Oh, is that?
Do you want to
Oh,
open this in YouTube again?
yeah. Don't worry, we'll show it at the end.
Okay, cute.
So the real point of difference they wanted is in construction, it's kind of a little bit rough and ready sometimes. They wanted a real key point of difference by showing animation to show their products. And so we created the script. Once we had the script in a good spot, we then went into sketches, as you'll see here. So that, as you can see, this is like using arrows to show where things should move. And then from there, we actually then, and this was really fun, we actually took their employees and turned them into illustrations. So it was kind of bringing a little bit of that real life into animation, which was quite fun. This was a guy called Mick, really cheery chap, as you can tell. And we took a few more of the employees as well, and they became not only the narrators for the piece, but they also featured throughout. If you go on to the next slide, you can kind of show that it shows a little bit of a breakdown of that. And this was a really good way of kind of like bringing that real life into the animation and bringing the like employees into it as well. You know, Mick was the kind of guy that never really, from what I hear, he didn't really want to get on the camera ever. So that's why you can see he's so thrilled to even take this photo. So this is a great way to get such a key sort of employee at the company into motion and into these marketing materials without actually having to physically get him there. um, and then did loads of little different like facial animations as well. So because he was narrating, it was important that he talked. So I can do facial animations too. So towards the end of the video, he kind of talks through and sort of signs off the video, which is nice. And then you'll see that this is kind of bringing it to life. So from those initial sketches, you can see some of it's changed, but then that's kind of what the sketches are there for. When it comes to building the animation and building the illustrations, the way I like to kind of explain it to clients is that it's a little bit like a Jenga tower. You know, it's all well and good when we've got the sketch phase and we're kind of building that Jenga tower up. But then once we're kind of really deep into it, to move like a whole section of blocks out and put it somewhere else, it's going to take a lot more time and it's going to be a lot heavier of a job to do. It's not a quick fix, which is why sketches are really, really good. Sketches, they're not meant to be the cleanest or tidiest things, but the idea is that we make our mistakes there, we do huge changes there, and it'll keep the timeline and process running really efficiently throughout. And then if you go on to the next slide, I think this will be the video. Yes. Oh, it's playing. Oh, cool. So yeah, you can see everything kind of being brought to life now, and based on the storyboards and the amends, we then kind of bring it into motion really and get it moving. So yeah, that's just a little sting from that. So if you go to the next page, please. So yeah, all in all, once the animation was completed, much as I talked about before about sort of process and want to get more bang for your buck, one thing we were really keen on is throughout this process, I also created a lot of their products and a lot of their machinery as vector illustrations. And it seems so silly to just, once the animation's done, to just have one video and that's it, when you've got all this stuff you can get out of it. So from that one video, we then did social breakdowns. So lots of different cuts and edits for social. We also took all the illustrations, saved them out as individual assets that then have been used on websites, brochures, and the list kind of goes on. So you can see that from one animation, we've then been able to sort of squeeze out loads of different assets that can be utilized across the business.
And like Lucy spoke about earlier, that really helps to bring alive your general marketing as well. So it's brilliant and it gives that consistency across all your channels for the posts that aren't just sharing the animation in the video.
Exactly. And
yeah,
that's
really
spot
important.
on. And exactly and also even though the illustrations are static, there's nothing to say that you can't create static social posts if you wanted to use those. If you wanted, in this case of the Blue Group before, if there's a bit of machinery that they wanted to talk about, they could take that illustration, zoom into it, and be like, this is this exact part of the machinery we want to talk about in this social post. But yeah, in terms of animation, loads and loads of brands are adapting it now. It's becoming like a key cornerstone for a lot of brands. things called like motion guidelines, which a lot of animators, such as myself, is doing for clients now. Some really good examples of brands that are utilizing animation and absolutely killing it. Duolingo is probably the top one that just always springs to mind. I mean, they literally use animations and illustration to teach you language. They're very effective at that. Burger King recently got a huge stack of illustration animations in that they utilize across the brand. I mean, the list goes on. It's just, again, it's just a really good like avenue for, taking anything that you want from your brand and you want to explain. Animation can just be a really good way to sort of do that. And I did say that I touched on AI because that's like it's quite a hot topic at the moment. The image that you see on the right there is actually what I asked AI. I asked AI to do a self-portrait, and that's what it thinks it looks like, which is quite creepy. But I think again, people just get really scared of it, and I often get like asked, in terms of my process and what I do, like, oh, can we use AI for this? And can we use AI? Oh, do we still need to do custom illustrations? Can we just get AI? And I think AI isn't a fix for everything. It's much like a tool. When Getty Images or Shutterstock came out, photographers were really, really worried that, oh my God, like this is going to take my job. It's the end. But actually, all it's done is made photographers more lucrative and their work more, sought after because AI creates an AI style image that's very like, I don't know, quite generic sometimes. Whereas using illustration and animation, you can create something that's really bespoke to your brand. AI is still important though, and I use it daily. Like I use it as a tool for what all areas of what I do, but I'd never use it to like replace the sort of human creative kind of element. Um, but yeah, it can be used in good ways. I think it's just, it's never like a good full-on replacement. And I think the more people that continually use it for social, for video, everyone just starts, they'll just start blending together and you won't have that sort of differentiation. And that's me in a nutshell. Yeah, so
Excellent.
like I say, I guess we're going to go into a bit of a question time after this, but yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jordan. I personally love seeing the process behind it because I've not ever been involved. I've briefed in animation, I've managed the projects, but obviously I have never created it other than I think the last time I picked up a pencil was probably GCSE art. And I can't even imagine how to bring that to life in the digital sphere. So it's just a bizarre science, which is absolutely brilliant and really does help to add another layer and support video so well and works in its own dimension as well. So
Yeah.
thank you. It's really exciting and insightful to see how it pulls together because
Yeah.
it's very exciting. So I want to open up the floor now for anyone to ask any questions. So if anyone wants to jump on, you can either put them in the chat or feel free at this point. You can unmute yourselves and ask away.
I have a question if that's all right, if you can hear me okay as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
perfect.
Fab, thanks. It's just so I work in a law firm. I'm the social media and content executive in a law firm, which is quite a niche one because people need a lawyer rather than want a lawyer. So to take that to market is quite unique, especially when it comes to social media. With the animation, though, it's quite an interesting one. As the trends are moving now, people are investing and they're following and engaging more with individuals than they are with brands, and that's been a big shift over the past 5 years. People buy into people, and people now follow and engage and create media with the key heads of the businesses rather than what the business does itself, especially in the situation where we're a service provider rather than selling a product.
Absolutely.
The idea of being able to animate our CEO and our managing partners as they are the face of the brand, as and when the time comes that they disappear from the brand, they still are a big part of what our brand's identity is. But being able to animate them seems like a great opportunity to almost make their involvement in the brand more timeless and everlasting. But my main question is around voice and audio. I know that there are generative models out there that can create audio, but is that something that you could I could work with you on in terms of having voice recorded samples and being able to then type into a program which can make our CEO say something, not in a malicious way, because that sounds like you want him to say something you don't want him to, but you know what I mean.
You want him
Yeah,
to say, Blake, you deserve a promotion and pay rise, don't you?
Yes,
yeah, that's
please.
it.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's
You're
what
like,
I'm
Can be
oh,
after.
we'll give
Yeah,
useful.
that's
Blake a pay
exactly
rise.
it. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Put
Yeah,
that.
no,
I'll send it out on a group email. Yeah.
yeah, you can totally do stuff like that. You could also look into finding if sometimes it can be very hit and miss. I find AI at the moment with the voiceover stuff. Some of it sounds really good, but some of it you can just tell a little bit of the uncanny. So what you could also do is look into a voiceover artist that's got a very similar voice to your boss. So it's still your boss's words just coming out of a different sort of person's mouth. But also, yeah, it's interesting you say about animation. One of my main clients actually is BPP, which do you know BPP, the like a law school. So we do a lot of animation with them. And yeah, that's been a real cornerstone for what they do as a point of difference. They literally have for what they do. They'll have other like law schools and law firms, and they'll be making sure that visually the animation and stuff helps them stand out. And they're currently going under a bit of a rebrand and stuff at the moment, which I'm working with them on to help give them that point of differentiation versus other law schools. So yeah, I think certainly if you wanted to bring your boss to life and turn him into a character that you can utilize across the brand, totally can do that.
I had a
Thank
related
you.
question, Jordan, about Mick and the Blue Group. You mentioned that he was the narrator. Was it his real voice, or was that a voiceover artist that sounded like
Voiceover
Mick? And
artist.
was there a discussion about that? Okay.
This is why I was laughing throughout it because like so it was I was working with an agency on this, so they were doing like the film side of things and I came in to do the animation, and they basically wanted him to do a little voiceover and then I could utilize that to create my animation, but he was just so like don't want to do any of it. And that's why even the picture of him, he's not even smiling or anything. Like he did not want to be a part of it. But we found a voice that was similar to his. He signed it off and was all okay with it. So we brought Mick to life, used kind of like words he would say, but yeah, it didn't really need to involve him. He just, he was still part of it because he's been like an employee there for years and years and years. And they were like, we need to have him on there. And then, yeah, he became a real backbone for the whole animation piece, really.
Excellent. We've got another question through the chat saying, could you suggest any platforms or tools to use to create animation videos? I know that Jordan, you've probably got some more expert ones, but from a entry level, I've had quite a bit of joy with Biteable, can be quite fun. Biteable's quite easy to use. And depending on your Canva skills, I know that Ben gave them an honourable shout out before, but you can have a little bit of a play with creating some animation. That's obviously going to be much less bespoke, and you're not going to have your employees nor anything too bespoke there. But Jordan, have you got any other animation platforms or tools that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so I think Canva's probably the best one for entry level stuff. To be honest, any sort of marketing manager and stuff who wants to create little animated videos for social and stuff, I tell them Canva. It's easy enough to kind of work around and use. And like I say, that way, if there's any bigger project, kind of bring in sort of an animation agency to sort of do that. But then, yeah, outside of that, obviously After Effects and stuff is the stuff I use. But yeah, I'd probably say Canva is probably your best start. I believe Adobe Express might be exploring stuff in the future. Adobe Express being like Canva, Adobe's version of Canva. But yeah, I'm not 100% on that.
I think it's a
Yeah,
lot more
Adobe Express is a
expensive
bit more
too.
kind of slide based, isn't it, rather
Yeah.
than animation. I was going to give a shout out for Adobe Character Designer though. Have you
Oh
used that,
yeah.
Jordan? Yeah.
No,
And
no,
so
not for years.
yeah, so like some people use it as a kind of semi-pro tool, but you can use it without much knowledge at all. Essentially, you either create or have made or like choose from a library like a digital puppet, so a bit of
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
ready-made
yeah, yeah.
character which moves in certain ways, and then you kind of using your computer's webcam, you speak into that, and the character will copy your speech and your movements.
Hmm.
So that's quite a good kind of semi entry level one. There's a bit of a learning curve with it, but you could get some all right looking results just with that. So that's I'm pretty sure it's called Character Designer.
Yeah. I've got a question actually for you, Ben, to be fair. Uh, I don't know if anyone else
Should just
wants
have a
to.
coffee another time. Go on.
Yeah. Um, so one thing that I've had personally, whenever I've been on camera, right, and you'll probably have this a lot. I end up, my shoulders go up here, I
Mhm.
freeze up, I feel like a little bit awkward on camera. I don't know why, I just do. I try and relax and stuff like that. But have you got any tips for like even people just recording at home or being on a video that you're recording? How's best to kind of, I don't know, not come across so like, is there, should they look into the camera? What's the best kind of way to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I have the same issue because I don't love being on camera either. That's why I'm normally behind it. One thing with a phone is don't use the front camera because you can see yourself and you don't
Oh,
really want to
nice.
see
Okay.
yourself. I'm using the back camera now, so I know that if I look into the lens, I don't have to worry about what I look like because I can't see myself.
That's good.
So that's a good one. If it works with the kind of off-camera interview setup where you're looking at someone else, even if there isn't really someone there, you're just looking at somewhere in a fixed point in the middle distance. Don't just look anywhere because you can tell that you're faking it. But if I look at the area in that corner, it looks like I'm looking at an interviewer, but I'm not worrying about the camera because I'm looking at the camera. And again, I can't see my face.
Yeah. Is that normally what
That's
you
one.
say when someone comes in and you're like, say, if you're filming like a case study video that you mentioned, is there like a certain, you sort of say to people, right, sit down, look over there, breathe and relax, go. Is there a kind of process that you sort of tell people about when they sit down for an interview?
It depends a bit on the person and how confident they are, but usually a good kind of trick that we do is come back to the first question at the end because they spend the first question warming up and getting into it and
Yeah.
getting used to the camera. By the second question, they've got into it, and then we'll come back to the start at the end. And once they're kind of into it and they've been chatting a bit, there's probably been a bit of banter back and forth, a bit of like laughing about stuff that they've messed up and that kind of thing. So that's one thing we do that works well. We don't have one of these, but some people use a tool called iDirect, which is basically a one-way mirror that goes in front of the camera that's kind of pointed. It's really hard to explain, but the person looking at the camera is actually seeing a reflection of the interviewer who's sitting to
Oh,
the
right.
side of the camera. So they're directly talking to a person rather than a camera, but they're looking into the camera lens.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
quite a good one. Yeah.
That is fun. Has anyone else got any questions they either want to pop on the chat or unmute themselves for?
Ben, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Hi, Kirsty.
Hi, Ben. Hi,
Hi.
everyone.
Hi.
My question's about lighting. So we do quite a bit of filming, sometimes on a phone, sometimes on some bigger kit. But we live in Manchester. Don't know where everybody else is from. So a lot of the time it is quite dull. And obviously you try and pick days where you would do that. So I was wondering how much you would introduce false lighting into settings versus doing correction stuff in the post edit. Or is it okay that it's sometimes darker because that is just what it looks like?
It's a good way. Are you talking about normally inside or outside?
I mean, we've experienced both, but so for
Yeah.
example, if it's a gig setting, you'd expect it to be darker. So how much do you introduce false light, or if you are just